Welcome to Agronomy Moment. I'm your host, Wendell Cohen. We bring in people who agree with me, disagree with me, and above all, are not afraid to say it like it is. All right, welcome back everybody to Agronomy Moment. Celena's joining me here with our next video here in our winter topics. One of the things we've been hearing some about is soil compaction, and it's a very important piece. And so I was trying to imagine what I thought a plant might feel like if he's in a compacted situation, and I had to think about flying. And this poor guy there with his little bean plant hoodie on, and he's sitting there between two big guys and he's being squished. I would say his stress levels are going out the roof. The flight attendant won't bring him a drink. He's struggling to get enough to eat.
I just want to say I hope this helps our viewership.
I don't know, but I think that this illustrates that, you know, roots and plants need air, water, nutrients, and space to grow. And when we have compaction, we are greatly reducing all of that. And so,
before we really dig into anything, I think that every year this is one of the things that is really hindering us in some of our yield that we see in the field is some form of soil compaction, and it comes in various different ways, but I think it gets kind of overlooked a lot. So kind of one of the things that's one of the first things I check for early on in the fields is soil compaction, and just to see what we're working with there.
So what's some of the causes? Why did that start, and what happens?
Yep. So field traffic and using, I think later on we kind of talk about some of the solutions to these problems.
Yeah.
But field traffic is one of the easiest ways that we create compaction within our fields. Being in our fields whenever they're wet, whether that's with tillage pass, and we shouldn't. We're probably pushing the envelope a little too quick on a tillage pass and it's too wet.
Yep.
Planters, our planter pass, kind of goes to that last bullet point. When we have too heavy of down pressure on our planter pass or too heavy of a load somewhere on our planter, and then being in that wet field, of course, and then grain carts and combines. A lot of this can be attributed back to the field traffic, being in the field, and I know somebody out there is probably going to say, well, I don't have a choice. I had to mud my crops out or whatever.
Yep.
I understand that things like that happen, but in general, these are the ways that we create the monster of soil compaction.
It still creates the issue.
Yeah.
And there's not that's the end of the road. Now you have no choice but to accept you have compaction, but that's where that's where we're starting with it.
Yep.
And do you have any ideas? And it's fine if you don't, but I was just thinking, is there any data out there? Does Bex have any data on like tracks versus tires? And I know they have some tire pressure study information that helps flotation.
I don't believe we have anything tracks versus tires, but we do have a lot of information on tires.
Yeah, and how to help that the most we can.
Lowering our tire pressures. That's a really good point because I don't even think I included that on here, but lowering our tire pressure.
Yep.
Tire pressures. We've done a lot of studies on that here the past few years, and learning that taking our extreme of what the recommended PSI is, and even just lowering it very incremental amounts has helped us tremendously. Just spreading out that footprint, not having as much of a compaction issue. So
what's the effect on the soil? This guy's he's still having some problems.
Back to the original photo, it says it all, really, or kind of helps illustrate the whole point is it's just squeezing the life out of our soil. So we always kind of think about what the plant is looking like due to a compaction issue, but so much is going wrong in the soil, and that's where everything is starting. Okay. That's where we start looking. You're looking at the roots, seeing what kind of shape the roots are in, but there's no I shouldn't say no oxygen, but a limited amount of oxygen usually happening in these scenarios.
Yep.
And in extremes, we're probably talking completely anaerobic conditions.
Yep.
And when oxygen is not getting to that soil, a whole list of really not good things is happening, or I shouldn't say happening, not happening in
Yes,
our soil, rather.
that's right.
So our microbial activity is really slowing down. Think about our mycorrhizal fungi, for example. Whenever we're talking about phosphorus and water uptake, those are really helping that those roots take that up. Water can't drain properly. Our nutrient cycle is not efficient. Our nutrients are staying tied up way longer. Again, whenever we don't have oxygen introduced into the soil, we have a lot of issues happening. Our organic matter cycling that we're trying to rely on all year long is being really slowed down. So just a lot of effects there that happen from our soil compaction that we don't see.
Yep.
We don't see all of this happening in the soil, so it's hard for our brains sometimes to comprehend or think about, okay, well, went through the field when it was a little wet, but that part of the field hasn't been the same since.
Yes.
And we always think about, okay, well, that part hasn't been the same since. I wonder why. So things like that, where it's like sometimes we have to have it come full circle and then, aha, I was there when I shouldn't have been, or I had to harvest whenever it was a little too wet, but I forgot to maybe combat some of those issues that I might have created.
Or I started the field and it was fine, but as I got to that one other side, I knew I shouldn't have been there, and I wished I hadn't started.
Sure.
See, like that's some of my dilemmas. I start, like, okay, it'll work, and then all of a sudden, like, no, it's getting worse. And you're like, but I'm halfway done. So yeah, no, that makes total sense, is that to identify that. So, and what happens too, maybe you touch on this here, but if your root profile is coming in and then you've got this compaction layer, now you're not able to access a full broad spectrum of food, right, for nutrition too, right? Because you're just limiting your roots mainly to that.
Yeah, that stratification layer, that soil pan there, really limiting our roots and how our roots are growing, and how they're able to get to certain available nutrients. And that's kind of on this slide. So we wanted to hit on the effects on the soil, because that's where it starts. That's where our effects are going to happen, and then it's going to show up in our crop. So those hatchet roots is what I think of, especially in corn. If we have that really compacted layer of a soil pan either underneath, or a soil pan or bricks, if you will, to the side, because we maybe had our down pressure a little too heavy, by going and digging that up. If we've got roots that are only growing with the row, that is limiting our crop tremendously, because they're only growing with the row. They're not able to spread out, to go find water, to go find nutrients. So that's kind of what you had just brought up, and how whenever we limit those roots, we say roots don't move, yield doesn't either.
Yes.
It handcuffs us a lot there. And then thinking from especially how important it is in corn to get your neighbor up as close as you possibly can from an emergence standpoint. We deal with a lot of uneven emergence problems, or this plant's at, say we get a call, well, this plant's at V5, but I've got this next plant's at V1 or V2 or whatever. And that's not always caused from a compaction issue either, but a lot of times it can attribute to that problem.
Uneven growth.
And that uneven growth, and thinking about later on down the road with ear size, that uneven emergence is really crucial. Making sure we get that emergence really close to each other as far as the corn. Stunted plants, again, going out there, especially you have a picture there with water ponding in a cornfield, and thinking, well, these plants are stunted, but they've had they've had all the moisture they can need.
That's right.
And even maybe in a well-drained scenario. But whenever our corn plants look stunted, they're doing that yellowing, doing that purpling,
Yep.
they've had moisture, probably looking at compaction to be some sort of our culprit there.
Yep.
And again, whenever our roots can't grow, it's just bad.
Yep.
So we can't handle the stresses that Mother Nature is throwing at us, whether that's water stress, whether that's a heat stress, because our roots don't have the option. They can't root down.
Yes. And they're not going to be preloaded with enough nutrition, which nutrition is critical to health, right, later on. And if they can't get the nutrition, not only will they not grow and not yield, but they also can't protect themselves as well.
Sure.
And so that's where you get the yellowing and purpling, you get the heat stress. Am I following that correctly? Yep.
Yeah, and then in soybeans, typically we would see some poor nodulation happening in the soybeans with that compaction layer there.
Sure.
Just, again, roots not being able to do what roots need to be able to do.
Yep. They can't, to your point, roots can't move. The yield does not either. So talk about some remedies, because there's something we can do. There's things that we can do.
Sure, yeah. And depending on your farming operation, the remedy is going to change from your farm to somebody else's farm. It's not always going to be a one-size-fits-all approach for a compaction problem. So improving that drainage is one of the main things I think of. And sometimes that takes a pretty large capital investment. But trying to get our water away, so whether that's ditches or whether that's tiling, terracing, however we can to improve that drainage to get our water off is very important. Sometimes a shallow tillage pass can help with that. If we've got a stratification layer at the the very, very top of our soil, sometimes a shallow tillage pass can help. On the flip side, sometimes we have a tillage pan or a stratification layer that's deeper. A deep tillage approach might be the way to go there, whether that's like a ripping situation or an inline ripper, something of the nature to get us deeper to try to fracture that soil pan there. And again, fracture, not smear. So back to our original, what causes these hard pans compaction layers is whenever we're in the field, whenever it's not conducive.
So you're thinking like inline ripper or ripper, not disking or right? Or what do you think when you say deep tillage? A lot of things go through my mind.
Yeah, so I was thinking specifically a ripper in this case. A field cultivator would be okay too. I was just thinking more of along the lines of our field conditions, making sure we're in that field, doing that tillage pass whenever it's dry, rather than whenever it's wetter or the soil is a little heavy. We're just going to create more problems. That's where I was going.
We do have to work in tandem with the conditions. Yeah, makes sense.
And then reducing our field traffic, our smart traffic flow through the field. So with especially, I'm thinking our harvest equipment here, grain carts, making sure we are trying to use the same path to where we're not spreading this, grain cart tracks all across the field, trying to use a few set of tracks
strategy to your travel
rather than spreading that out across your whole field, and that way maybe you would have less you would have less to go back and fix.
And I think I read this somewhere. I think it was a Firestone study or something talked about that the first pass is equivalent to the majority of the compaction. So every time you make the first pass over a piece of ground that hasn't been driven on, you're doing a lot of compaction on a wet soil right there. So if it's a wet harvest, keeping your grain carts always on the same path, just like you say, you're limiting the area that you have to fix. And you're probably also actually limiting the compaction that you actually do have. Because if you just drive every single path, I think it's like 60% of the compaction is going to occur on the first pass. I'm just throwing out a number. But
You're right.
So what builds soil structure? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I think in organic matter there, and again, it differs from farm to farm, but thinking about sometimes in our tillage situations, we're thinking about soil erosion and what could happen there. Stay tuned. We might have a little bit of something coming with that tillage. So kind of delving a little bit more into that, maybe how we can mitigate some of those issues if we do have to address with a tillage pass. Cover crops, again, that's I think something that we mentioned or meant to mention. I don't know if I mentioned it yet, but another way we can kind of build that soil structure, help our organic matter levels there.
One of the things too I was going to throw in there is, a picture there is of a soil probe, and to check where your layer is, like you talked about shallow versus deep, understanding where that's at and finding it is key to understanding what tool is going to take to remove it. And even if you're using a tool, how deep you need to go, because you don't want to go any deeper than you have to. You want to stay right below that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah.
So, and if you ever have any questions, I have a soil probe, and I'm glad to walk a field with you. Too dry of conditions isn't a good time, and obviously just too wet, but there's kind of that time in between where you can feel it and know where you're at. So once again, thank you for joining us on this podcast around soil compaction. We hope it helps provide you with the information you need to move forward to successful future years. Thank you.
So, what? I thought it turned out well.
Yeah, I thought it was fun.
If you were Scott Dickey now, you would say something like, "It's about time for lunch."
Guys,
what else?
Starving.
You're starving?
Yes.
What would he call it? What does he say? Grub or something? He calls it something else. He doesn't say, "Let's go for lunch." He says, I don't know, ready for something.
Scott, I don't.
You don't know what's going to come out. Exactly. But I wish he was here. We could have made a really nice roundtable discussion. And
Hey, I got selected.
Field of Drums of the Year.
No.
It's your turn again.
For wave 1 of the whiskey.
It's almost bean time. So I got spooners ready. It's almost bean time.
Lunch, yes.
Scott always brings up.
Well, it's 11:30. It's 12 almost.
No, it's not.
Like I was shutting it off, and I just kind of
I got that splinter dissected out.